The stimulus debate continues between Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill. Unfortunately, the White House is also very much involved in these talks. And based on what we recently heard from White House economic advisor about this, it's not a good sign. So this was during an interview with Poppy Harlow on CNN. And this is gonna give you a little insight into where the White House is when it comes to the enhanced unemployment benefits and whether they're going to be expanded. Take a look.
If you pay people a lot more to stay home than to go to work, then the idea that there could be more people going to work, it just doesn't add up. And so I think that what Republicans are trying to do is fix the
study from July. I mean, you saw the Yale study from just a few weeks ago.
The Yale study was early data.
Can I quote from it? Quote, "We find no evidence that more generous benefits disincentivize work either at the onset of the expansion as firms look to return to business over time." It's wrong?
Right. Well, that's based on, yes, it is wrong. And when we get the full data, that result is almost surely going to be reversed. But think about it, Poppy, just think about the logic of it. If I pay you, so if you take a typical median family, say in Tennessee, that if they don't go to work under the $600 plan, then they get about $90,000 a year. And if they do go to work, they get about $50,000 a year. And so the assertion that staying home and getting $90,000 or going to work and getting $50,000, that's not going to have an effect on your decisions, it just doesn't add up. It's not economics.
Well,
and so,
that's not true.
I wonder, I haven't played with their data yet, but I really, really don't believe that study.
All right, I believe, and have heard from so many Americans that they want to go back to work, and they want to go back to work, and they want to feel safe. Even the University of Chicago numbers shows it's about 1 in 5 that are doing what you're saying.
I mean, the ability of these people, of White House officials and of members of the GOP to just lie the way that we just heard right now, like, blows my mind. Who's earning $90,000 a year on unemployment? Who? I mean, it's simple math. No one's earning $90,000 a year. So that was intentional hyperbole to make it appear as though these enhanced benefits are too much and serve as a disincentive to get back to work. But an easy way to respond to this, John, is let's take a look at how many people are unemployed, tens of millions, literally. And let's take a look at the number of jobs that have been lost during this pandemic due to quarantining, closures, the common sense stuff that people needed to do in order to slow the spread of coronavirus. It's just, look, I think Poppy Harlow did a decent job in that interview. I'm not, criticizing her, but where does the White House and where does the GOP expect individuals who have been laid off to find new work? Because they're making it appear as though they're not looking for work, they don't want to go back to work. And by the way, there are people who legitimately should not go back to work, especially when the virus is spiking in the number of new cases in this country. The number of deaths is also spiking, something that you brought up during our break, John. And so, I want to turn to you. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, well, so yesterday, 1,400 deaths were reported, or over the last 24 hours anyway, which is a lot. It's almost tripled from the low point of the pandemic in the middle there. And it is interesting that people like him, and I don't even remember his name, but there's a lot of them. They're all the same, basically.
Hassett?
Will continue to assert, whoever it is, they'll continue to assert against all of the evidence that obviously the fact that they're temporarily making a little bit more money is 100% driving their behavior. And they will not acknowledge that one way you could incentivize people to go back is to provide a safe workplace by actually dealing with the virus. That can't be affecting anyone's consideration, when obviously it is. There's nothing I want more in the world than go back to work, but I know it's not safe for us all to be there. So they hold those two things. And one of the issues I have is, you are supposed to, in American politics, pretend that everyone agrees on a few things. One of them is that people voting is a good thing. We don't all agree on that. And if you don't understand that, politics and political activity isn't gonna make a lot of sense to you. And also that people should make more money. We don't all agree on that. Workers agree on it. People who advocate for workers agree on it, but the people who represent those doing the paying do not actually want people to make more money. They want to pay as little as possible. So which is a better explanation for what you're seeing from suits like him and Mnuchin and Navarro and all of those, that all these studies are simultaneously wrong and they would just love to pay people more money, but we know that it's affecting people's behavior, or they have a philosophical opposition to workers making more. That drives everything they've done, and it's continuing to do so. And people like her, they need to point that out explicitly. You don't want people to make more money.
Shareholders need a return on their investment, right? And so paying workers a livable wage is not something that goes along with ensuring that your investors get the biggest return on their investment. There's no question about that. That's why they keep pushing for the system that not only destroys the quality of life for the average worker in this country, but also doesn't even have a safety net in place when people are in a crisis like the one we're experiencing right now. Because in order to fund that social safety net, what do companies need to do? What do corporations need to do? What does this country's wealthy need to do? They need to pay their taxes. It's a lot harder to pay your taxes, just like the middle class and the working class is expected to do when you're a corporation that needs to do what? To ensure that your investors have the highest return on investment. It always goes back to that we need to start thinking about the real motives behind the narratives that we're hearing by members of Congress. That includes the GOP, that of course includes former economic advisors like the one we just heard from for the White House. And it also includes some Democratic members of Congress as well. But here's one thing that our lawmakers have no problem spending money on. Something that Trump has recently referred to as the so-called super duper missile. So let's take a look at that nice phallic imagery right there. So according to Gizmodo, while we still don't know much about the missile specs, hypersonic missiles are almost certainly the future of military posturing during the new Cold War, as Russia is developing something very similar. In fact, Colonel Anthony Mastelier from the Space Wing Commander, he's a Space Wing commander, also said the following: "This launch demonstrates that we are able to provide the range support needed to facilitate this test during peacetime operations in the midst of COVID-19 operations, signifying that our nuclear enterprise is safe, secure, reliable, effective, and ready to defend the United States and our allies." Oh, thank God, because the 30 million Americans who have come to rely on the enhanced unemployment benefits were really worried about protecting our nuclear enterprise. That was really top of mind, when it came to issues like paying their rent or being able to avoid eviction. Now, the White House is considering executive orders, according to Yahoo Money, involving renewing the federal eviction moratorium, suspending the collection of payroll taxes, which I think is a trick, and I've talked about that before. I think it's meant to gut Medicare and Social Security, and applying unused funding towards extra unemployment. But we're not getting good signs from Republican lawmakers either. So far, the best option that they've put on the table, would not continue the enhanced unemployment benefits for a significant period of time. For instance, US Senators Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, and Martha McSally introduced legislation today, Wednesday, that would extend the current expired extra unemployment benefits through the end of the year, but not so fast. They're not so great. The new legislation would allow states to extend $500 in extra unemployment per week for August, or $400 per week if the state prefers not to change the payment amount again in September, but then provide $400 per week in September and provide 80% wage replacement, or seek a waiver for $300 per week in extra unemployment for October through December. So it's nonsense. It's nonsense. It's purposely meant to be complicated and difficult to understand. It's purposely meant to give Americans less money during this economic crisis and this public health crisis. It's nonsense, it's garbage, and we shouldn't fall for it.
It's so needlessly extra complex and insulting that, once we hit fall and winter, when a lot of experts have been saying like that is when we're gonna get hit by the true second wave, that at that point we'll be transitioning people down to less money, and probably eventually they can go through the process yet again to seek a waiver to get a tiny little bit of money. If they were successful already in going through the multi-week process of finally getting through to someone and finally getting these payments, and then proceeding along and they lapse because our government really doesn't give a damn, and it takes literally weeks for them to finally resume once a deal is reached, assuming it's reached anytime soon, that you'll then be kicked off again later this year and have to seek a waiver for an insultingly low amount of money to allow you to continue to survive in a pandemic that you had nothing to do with creating.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.